Good afternoon. My name is Miles Bassett, and this is Ask Wildman, an open Q&A produced by Wildman Web Solutions, where my team and I get on here and answer your questions about technology, marketing, business, whatever you want to ask us. If you have any questions, you want to throw your 2 cents in or participate in the conversation, please throw your questions in the comments below. We'll be watching those and answering those live. Or if you are not watching this live and you're catching this video later, you can still participate by emailing us at askwildman@wildmanweb.com. I've got that email scrolling below me. We're doing this live stream every week, Thursdays at noon, live streaming to our Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube accounts. So pick your poison there and tune in every Thursday at noon to get your questions answered and hopefully get some good information about running a small business and leveraging technologies. That's what we're all about here at Wildman Web Solutions. So going to go ahead and get started here. First, got to bring in my partner in crime, Mr. Mike Hanna. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Well, Mr. Miles, I am doing fantastic, sir. How are you on this afternoon?
I'm good. I am excited to talk with you a little bit today because, as I said in the open here, we are a digital marketing agency, so we work on social media all day, every day, live it and breathe it. And there's just been so many things happening. Elon's got a sink and Instagram crashes and all sorts of social media news. So I feel like we can't not cover that this week. So if you have any questions on this, you want to throw in your 2 cents, please go ahead and throw it below. I'm sure that'll be an interesting discussion, but we're just going to go ahead and hit a couple of those headlines, high level stuff, news reporting, and then maybe take that into a little bit more of a practical application as to what that means to you, the small business owner, give out a couple of tips and tricks here. So, Mike, where do you want to start?
100%, Miles. Yeah, well, let's start in the digital ad space, and this is just going to kind of, I guess, be a roundtable discussion to kind of get us all caught up on. I know people have been seeing all kinds of headlines out there with names like Meta and Google and Amazon. And of course, we had earnings week last week on Wall Street. So that's part of the reason why a lot of these companies you're seeing make some news is because they had their earnings reports all come together. Most of them at least come together during last week. Snapchat reported, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so when these events happen, you get a lot of news stories swirling about, and sometimes it's just good to just sit down and talk through what's happening and what that means for our businesses here on Main Street, not necessarily what's happening on Wall Street. But yeah, most of the earnings reports out there missed expectations. So, it was at least not as great as the market analysts were predicting, but there is some glimmers of good news mixed in with the bad news. So we'll siphon through and look at both sides of the equation here. But so it's not all doom and gloom. But as we know, the economy's been in a period of stagflation for most of the year. We have high inflation. We have relatively lower productivity than we're used to, but we did get a good GDP report for third quarter, so that was positive. Although inside the report, there was some negative news, especially on the consumer side of things, and the consumer what their spending level is and how what their sentiment is been waning a little bit, and that's been one of the last pieces to fall here throughout the year. The consumer's actually been doing relatively well and kept up with spending and the things that we like to see, and that is slowing down now. And so part of what has happened is, that led to these revenue expectations being missed is advertisers pulling back. And as we all know, all these platforms, even the ones like Amazon and Apple that we don't think about maybe as big of advertising platforms as something like a Meta or a Google, they do still produce a whole lot of revenue from the ad side of things. So what tends to happen when the macroeconomic conditions soften is companies start to pull back, they start to cut costs, and unfortunately, many of them see their advertising budget as a discretionary spend, and so they start to pull back. And so that's part of the reason why we saw some not so pretty numbers from the revenue side of things from names like Meta and Google and Apple and Amazon over the.
Uh-oh, like we lost Mike. He's recording on his phone. I think he just got a call. Let's give him a second to see if we can get him back on here. Very important point being made. All right, I'll see what I can do here. Anyway, so I guess to bring that full circle, of course, we've been seeing a bunch of heads around a bunch of different platforms, social platforms, but not all of it is strictly because of business decisions that they're making or some of the more obvious headlines. Some of this is just effects of the market writ large. So people have been a little bit wary of putting a bunch of money towards these platforms, towards advertising, if they do see that as a discretionary cost. As the market dips and there are some more uncertainty in there, one of the first things to go, as we often see, is that marketing spend. Hey, Mike.
I apologize there, Miles. Had a little technical mishap as a phone call was coming in. But yeah, I was in the middle of explaining that, we, even with that positive GDP report last week, we are in the midst of a macroeconomic slowdown. And so that has been causing especially some larger companies to pull back their advertising spend. And so that's why we've seen missed revenue projections from companies like Meta and Google and Apple and Amazon and the like. So as I said, the most troubling part of the latest GDP report was that the consumer was starting to slow down. That's something that we haven't necessarily seen so far in the year, and some other things like productivity in the manufacturing sector. And of course, we've all been seeing what's happening in real estate lately. So that has all been adding more fuel to this fire of people pulling back, which can actually be a really, really good opportunity for a small and medium-sized business, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But overall, for the year, if you're just looking at GDP, it's flat, right? If you take the first 2 quarters of negative growth, the 2.6 of the third quarter, it ends up being 0. So it's basically a wash. Unfortunately, a lot of CEOs out there are expecting it to get a little bumpier in Q1 and Q2 next year. So that's what is kind of going on in the macroeconomic sense of the advertising space right now. Now, a couple things. First of all, it's not necessarily a good idea to pull back your advertising in a downturn. We've talked about this before on the show. We'll get into it here a little bit. And the other thing to understand is that when we talk about macroeconomics, we're talking about the really, really big picture. And that may not apply to you and your business. And so, never make personal or individual decisions on your business strictly on what's happening in the macro, right? You got to look at the micro and what is happening in your specific industry, your specific competitors, and how your specific business is positioned to handle a downturn. All of those things are going to come into play, much more important than a GDP figure one way or the other in the macro. So advertising has been taking a hit here. We just got a report the other day, some big drops in things like radio and television, especially in linear television, in magazines. Those kind of things have hit a huge drop, just kind of fallen off the cliff there. But there's also been a slowdown in digital advertising. Digital advertising has only grown 5%. And that's may sound like a lot, but it's actually down quite a bit, and certainly down from the projections at the start of the year of where digital advertising was going to be. But the good news is that means things are getting cheaper. And I know that we haven't seen a lot of anything getting cheaper lately. So this should be a welcome sign if you are a current advertiser or you've been waiting for a spot in the marketplace to actually advertise. Meta, we talked about, they missed their expectations and they saw a 4% drop in their revenue for third quarter, but they also saw an 18% cost in their ads for third quarter year over year from last quarter. So that's a win for a small, medium-sized business that's using Facebook and Instagram to advertise. So that could be like I said, an opportunity that if you're not taking advantage of advertising right now, that you look at and say, hey, I can devote some budget now at these prices since they've actually come down from where they were last year. And the other thing to keep in mind too is a lot of times you may notice that your competitors have decreased their advertising or stopped advertising altogether. And that should be a huge sign for you, if you can, to advertise and to increase your advertising. Market voice leads to market share over time, and this is something that we always see in a recession, or even going back to the Great Depression. We can find examples of well-known companies that lost their market share because they decided to cut back their advertising or suspend their advertising altogether once the economy took a downturn, and their competitors did the exact opposite, and they increased their spending and then took market share. So if you are in a position to do that, that is certainly something to consider. And as this softness of the economy continues to go, we're probably going to see more and more competitors start to pull back. Miles, there was a very troubling report that came out on Tuesday of this week that said almost 40% of small businesses, according to a survey, said that they couldn't afford to pay their rent last month in October. So there's going to be a lot of businesses that are forced to pull back their advertising. Obviously, if it's between your Facebook budget and your rent, you're probably going to choose your rent. And so that is something that we just need to be vigilant about and see what is happening inside of our space. Are our competitors pulling back? Do we have the opportunity to go on the offensive and actually gain some market share right now? So the other thing that we've been seeing on the ad side of things are a renewed effort in video. And video has always been really, really important, but it's turning, it's shifting, if you will, from more long-form content that we've seen in the past to shorts, right? Everything now has been influenced by the TikTok generation. And so that was one of the really big, interesting pieces of the Google earnings report, is that YouTube is actually down and their prices are falling as well. So that's another opportunity. If you have good video, if you have good content creation, and you're not using YouTube right now, prices are down. That is an opportunity for us to go on the offense and run some Google ads through YouTube. YouTube is also starting to monetize Shorts, which is their answer to TikTok. And so there's some advertising opportunities there that are coming about that weren't there last year. So those are two opportunities right there that maybe you take advantage of, and you look at expanding your advertising as the economy is actually turning down. And then, Miles, one other thing on the video here is Amazon. I thought this was really interesting. We don't typically talk about Amazon as much as we should in the advertising discussions, but they are really becoming a massive player. And we've talked a little bit about this over the course of the last year, but Amazon has been slowly rolling out more and more ways for small and medium-sized businesses to get closer to that point of purchase with the end user through e-commerce, or even for brands that don't do e-commerce, they're now able to advertise directly to Amazon's customer base, which, as you know, anybody knows that uses Amazon, they have all kinds of data on their customer base. And so it is becoming more and more effective in this environment where third-party cookies are slowly becoming less effective. And so data is really, really key to success right now in advertising. And I'm really bullish on some of the moves that Amazon is making here, and excited to see what they unveil. But before I get completely off of the subject of video, they did just release some new capabilities, actually a couple different things, a new suite of video advertising products. And this is exciting because this not only allows you as a small, medium-sized business to have, like I said, great point of purchase proximity to your end client, but you can also get into some of their streaming capabilities. Like Amazon is now the home of Thursday Night Football on NFL. They're also unveiling some products that allow you to make videos inside the platform. So you don't need to have a video crew come out and shoot necessarily your video. You can go directly into the platform and build a how-to video, an instructional video, a unboxing video. They have all these templates there that you can basically piece it together yourself. And so that's going to be a win for a lot of busy small businesses who we've talked about before that know they need to create content. They don't have the means or the time or the wherewithal to do it. So those are some things that I'm excited about, Miles, on the video side of thing. And then one other thing I wanted to point out here, and then let's open it up to some solutions of how we can work smarter and get more out of our online presence. But Apple made some waves as well in the advertising world recently, and they've basically said that they are going to treat Facebook and Instagram boosted posts as in-app purchases. And so what this means is that essentially is that Apple is taking their hand and they're putting it in Meta's pocket, and they're going to take a 30% chunk of all the dollars spent by boosting posts, which is a huge portion of Meta's advertising. So that is going to cause some waves in terms of the ad price and the ad usage on the Facebook and Instagram platforms. And while it's bad news for Meta, and it's bad news probably for anybody who's holding Meta stock still, God bless you. But I really do think this is bullish for small businesses in terms of being able to advertise more cost effectively on these platforms. And so that's going to be, my takeaway from all of this, Miles. And we haven't even got to Twitter yet, but my takeaway from all of this is, and I'm sure you have some suggestions on the website side of things, is be monitoring your competition, seeing who's pulling back right now in their ad spend, and see what platforms you can get more aggressive on and find more cost-effective ways to reach your target consumer, and maybe take some market voice up a notch to get some market share down the road when the economy starts to rebound again.
Yeah, the key takeaway I got there was that we can potentially look at this downturn or this volatile situation and see it as an opportunity rather than a big scary thing.
Exactly.
I'm seeing a lot of people, talk about that in the financial world. If you're talking about investing or something, right now is not the time to pull out. In fact, if you have time, if you have the resources to put more into the market, then it makes a lot of sense. Stocks are all on sale right now. Whenever anything is down, or anything is volatile like this, a lot of people want to pull their dollars out of this, pull their dollars out of the market, pull their dollars out of advertising. And that means that there is less competition out there. And so, like you said, maybe this is a good time for you to amp up a little bit, or find another area where you can get your voice out there in a different way, or take up a little bit more market share because your competition decided to pull back their ad spend. That is, if you have the resources to make that happen right now, which I understand if some people don't. Even if you don't, there are some things that you can do that aren't just putting money into the system, but are really more a task-based thing. There's one thing that I wanted to touch on here that I don't think that you got to, which was the crash on Instagram yesterday. Or what day was that? Earlier this week.
This week, yeah.
Whenever
I believe it was Monday.
Together.
Yeah.
So Anna, one of our coworkers here, actually said something really interesting about that, where there was a ton of small businesses that were just panicking because the platform crashed. It looked like a lot of people just got banned for a little while, or their accounts were all messed up. People lost followers. Basically, there was a whole big hiccup in the system. And so a lot of small businesses were panicking because they said, look, we're running our entire business on Instagram. If this account goes, or if we lose half of our followers, our entire business is gone. And so maybe another message that we can take here is that this is a good time to diversify a little bit. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket, especially if that basket is owned by someone else and they're completely responsible for maintaining it and making sure that it's alive and healthy. Because if Instagram decides to just switch off, go down with it. If you are working on multiple platforms, and then you talked about on the website side of things, is one tip that we give out on the show all the time, and that is, if you can, use social media to build your audience, to reach out to new people, but then pull them back to something that you own and control. So that could be something like your own website, rather than just selling everything on Instagram or selling everything on Facebook Marketplace or selling everything on Amazon. Maybe you also have your own e-commerce play on your own website, so that no matter what, if everything else goes south, you can still push people over into a venue that you actually control and that you are responsible for.
100%, Miles. I'm glad you brought that up. It just goes back to the old adage, don't build your house on rented land.
Yep.
And that outage on Instagram on Monday was a great reminder of that. And let's, I guess, talk a little bit more candidly about the company formerly known as Facebook. I mean, look, folks, like they literally changed their name to Meta. Okay, like that should give you some sort of a sense that things are going to change rapidly. And many small businesses have completely built their business around Facebook or Instagram, and that is where they live and they breathe, and they have literally built their house on rented land. And the only thing that we know for sure about that company is that it is going through a rapid change, and it is going to continue to go through a rapid change. Their focus is not on necessarily Instagram right now, right? Their focus is on building the metaverse. That's the other reason, besides the revenue shortfall on the ad side of things, that their stock is taking a major beating. And the doomsayers out there are saying, Meta's going to zero, right? Meta's done, right? This was a huge mistake that Zuckerberg should have never bid off all of this that he's now trying to chew and swallow. And they are losing billions and billions of dollars. Whether or not it ends up being something that is a windfall for them down the line, who knows, right? But they are just siphoning off massive amounts of capital and labor and time spent on this metaverse project. And so it makes sense that some of the other products are probably not going to be getting the full share of attention, and they're going to wane and maybe even suffer as a result as we go through this transition. So it's a great reminder to always be leveraging these platforms back to something you control, whether that be your website, your mobile app, your newsletter, your text messaging platform, or all of the above. In a perfect world, that is certainly something to keep in mind. Another great reminder, Miles, that we haven't talked about yet is this whole Twitter thing, right? I mean,
I told you there was a ton of headlines, social media headlines.
Right. And there's businesses out there that have built their entire business on the back of Twitter. And then, the Rocket Man buys it and takes it private all of a sudden, So the point is that anything can happen, and expect anything to happen out there. And don't think of these platforms as static in time, because they're always changing. They're always evolving. For better or worse over the course of time. It's the only thing that we know for sure. But yeah, let's touch on it. All kinds of news out there, of course, that it's breaking by the minute, with Elon now officially being the owner of Twitter. He's taken it private. He's fired the board. He fired the CFO, fired the CEO. All kinds of things happened over the weekend, where I think he even deleted one of his own tweets, and as a result, the advertisers have been leaving the platform. Especially these big brands, they don't like it when things are choppy and things are scary, and they don't feel like they're in control. And so, massive names out there have been leaving the platform and will probably continue to leave the platform. Again, I think after the dust settles, if these names don't come back, that's a huge opportunity for small and medium sized businesses. We talk about this all the time that all these platforms, it's just simple supply and demand in terms of a limited amount of inventory that people are buying to have their ads served on. And if more people are buying the inventory, then the price goes up. If less people are buying the inventory, the price goes down. And if these major Fortune 500 companies stop throwing their budgets at the platform, then the price is going to drop, and it's going to give us more opportunity for people with smaller budgets. So, again, I wouldn't run and hide from this. I would stick around and find out what's going to happen, and watch the price of that cost per thousand.
Some of the very
Watch for it to
few
drop and jump in.
advantages that we have as small businesses over those big names is that we can pivot faster, so we can make decisions very quickly and move around, whereas those giant companies, it's like turning a cruise ship. And then B, small businesses tend to be a little bit more okay with risk, whereas those big businesses are very, very risk averse. They cannot take any chances there. And so if they see something like Twitter changing every 3 seconds, then they're going to bounce. But those periods of volatility can be a massive opportunity for small businesses if you're in a place to be able to take that.
Yeah, you're 100%, Miles. Big brands, they have to be in an environment that's safe. I saw one story from over the weekend. We don't need to get into too much in the weeds into this, but I believe it was PBS Kids, and the CMO, the chief marketing officer for PBS Kids, literally saw one of their ads in a post that was asking people on Twitter to link them child pornography. Okay. And the CMO freaked out and pulled all the advertising, right? So, I mean, things like that are happening right now on the platform. So, like I said, I would wait for the dust to settle, but I don't see PBS Kids ever coming back to the platform after something like that happens. So
Pretty rough.
I mean, that's got to be a shock for a brand, right? And so I think that there is going to be some opportunity out there for brands once, I'm personally a believer in Elon, that I think he will get this all figured out. I think it's going to be chaos, for a few weeks, maybe months. But I do think that, he's a smart enough operator that he will figure out a way to make Twitter a better place for all. And that includes advertisers. He did put out a statement to advertisers over the weekend, saying that, he wants it to be not a free for all, I think hellscape, he said, but an actual functioning town square. And so we'll see. But like I said, I do think that there's some opportunities out there for advertisers on the smaller side right now.
Yeah, and that goes across the board. Of course, we like to talk about Twitter. That's the big, sexy, salacious story. But all of these platforms, as they're seeing these bumpy times or any points of volatility, from just a temporary outage like we saw on Instagram, to the managerial takeover on the Twitter side, or just the broader economic trends that you were talking about at the top of the show, all of these things breed volatility, but also opportunity for the small business if you're willing to take it. So I guess that's going to be our takeaway from the show today is, try to stay on top of all this stuff. We'll do the same, and, stay on the bleeding edge of all these stories and make sure that we're informed and we can help you and the rest of our clients take this opportunity to diversify a little bit. If you've found out, or if you're just now realizing you got all your eggs in one basket, maybe this is the wake-up call that you needed in order to push yourself off and try out some new things, and set yourself up in a way that's maybe a little bit more stable for when some things inevitably change here in the upcoming weeks, months, years. And then finally, use this opportunity. This is, all of these ads are now on sale. Your competition, your biggest competition, is pulling ad spend, pulling back. If you're in a good place, and a place where you can actually put something out there and make a couple of moves, this could be a great opportunity for you, the small business owner, to take up a little bit more market share and grow your business. So I guess with that, we're about half an hour in, so I think we can go ahead and try to wrap this up. But if you have any questions or if you have any additions to throw in here, as I'm sure people will, please throw those in the comments below. We'll respond to them there. Or you can email us, askwildman@wildmanweb.com, and we will either respond to you via email or use your email as a subject matter for next week's show, as we're doing this every week, Thursdays at noon. Check back in next Thursday, and we will see you then. Mike, thanks. And thanks everyone for watching.